and welcome back to another episode of Just Gay Stuff. I'm Lauren.
And I am Jess. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. And at the beginning of every episode, I guess recently, we're just wanting to say thank you so much for all our fabulous listeners and support. If you guys haven't done so already, be sure to hit follow buttons on all our socials. Make sure you hit reviews and leave us a little review and 5 stars on our Spotify.
5-star review, everybody. Make sure you're hitting that 5-star review, especially if you're enjoying this content that we're pumping out, because we're enjoying it. So we hope that you're enjoying it.
We surely are.
And we've been loving having guests, right?
We sure have.
I have been absolutely loving having guests, and I think online we've had so much positive response.
We have had such a huge and amazing response, and we're no shortage of guests here at the moment.
No, because we have another one today,
We have another
right?
special guest today. He's an award-winning journalist, a dad, and a best-selling author whose memoir 14 has currently been adapted for the stage. Please welcome Shannon Molloy.
Hello, how are you both?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Really, really chuffed to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
No worries. We're chuffed to have
We
you.
are.
Honestly, it's so humbling every time we have a guest on the show, and the fact that everyone is so willing to have a deep, honest, raw, real chat with two nobodies, essentially.
Everybody's a somebody.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
You've got to start somewhere, right?
Well, that's it. That's it. You do
Absolutely.
have to start. Yeah.
So, Shannon, everyone may or may not know you from your best-selling memoir 14, but there's other amazing things you have done. And we just want to kind of start from the very beginning, as we start with all our guests, the coming out story.
Yeah, where all our little queer hearts start.
Oh, gosh. Well, I did it in one of the worst ways possible, which was to send a letter to my mum.
Ooh.
And
Yeah,
then
harrowing.
immediately, I know, like, dear mum, hello. And then immediately forget that I had sent it. I was in America at the time on student exchange. I'd found myself and my people. I was super confident. Like every baby gay, I think I kind of embraced every possible element that I could of what I thought queer culture was, like dyeing my hair red and sneaking into nightclubs and all that sort of stuff.
That's what
and
I've
so
done. I've dyed my hair red.
Yeah.
I know. Yours
But it was
looks
like
much
13
better than
years
mine
ago.
did.
Oh, you'll have to show us.
Oh God, I'll send you a picture. It will haunt you for life. And so I thought, I'm gonna be who I am. I'm gonna write my mum this letter and tell her that, if she doesn't accept me, I'm just gonna stay here in America. And my bravado just took over my mind and almost replaced what I knew about my mum, which is that she would have loved me, that she wouldn't have balked at me. And so for her to read this thing, she felt a little bit hurt by that. And also, I was so dumb. She was a hairdresser. She knew a million gay people.
Yeah.
And then also she knew me. She raised me. She knew what was going on. But then I forgot, and I just remembered it one day and was like, oh my God, I've dropped this bomb and completely forgotten about it, and called, and it was the day that the letter arrived. So we sort of digested it together and had this really long and heartfelt conversation. And obviously it was great. My mum's my best mate. But it was hard. It was hard for her because what she had seen of what it meant to be a gay man was not at all positive. It was in an era where gay men were jailed for being gay. And then it was, she would see news reports in the 80s and 90s of gay men being essentially hunted in Sydney and murdered by gangs of, it's a horrible, I won't say the word, but bashers, P-word bashers. And then, of course, the AIDS crisis, which was just harrowing. And she knew men who she'd worked with and grown up with who perished during the AIDS crisis. So she saw that and then looked at little me and just imagined that's what my future would be. So she was terrified. Thankfully, it's been wonderful, and she's got to see me get married and start a family and have this, big, incredible career that, we both of us could have only dreamt of. And but it all started with a letter that then because I was so self-obsessed. I became an American. And so because I was so into myself, I completely forgot that I sent it. So, yeah.
Wow.
And what was the thoughts running through your head about replacing those things that you knew about your mum? Is it because as queer kids, we build up ourselves and all we see is negative things in media going, oh, well, this person doesn't accept you and these people will bully you at school. So did you build yourself up in that way of, oh, well, that's all I've seen that goes on, so my mum must think this and that's why I have to do it this way?
Absolutely. And I mean, there were even kids that I went to school with in America who had been shunned from their family. There was a boy whose parents kicked him out of home and he was living with, a school friend's family. You read all types of media that, whether it's books or magazine articles or internet blogs or whatever. And there aren't many, it's getting better, but at the time there weren't many happy endings. And then also I just think, when you're growing up grappling with this thing and you don't understand what it might be and there is a lot of negativity surrounding it, I think you kind of, speaking for myself, there were parts of myself that I hated at that time. And I figured if I hate it, then other people will too. And of course, as a kid, the last thing you want to do is disappoint your parents. So there's this huge expectation and huge weight. And I think, also I was a very dramatic teenager, so I catastrophized everything. And I still do.
Yeah. Well, that's good because you're a creative and now you can put that into your creative writing and everything like that. But when did you start to think, oh, maybe I'm gay? Like maybe I'm having feelings for other men, and how was that process for you?
Oh, I remember it so vividly. I would have been maybe 5 or 6, and there was a film that came out called Kindergarten Cop.
Oh yeah, yeah.
With Arnold
Arnie.
Schwarzenegger, yes. And the boy in the film, who would have been probably my age, who he's like being the undercover kindergarten teacher of. I just felt a little flutter in my chest watching that movie, and then instantly knew that was wrong, that there was something bad about that. And that still sticks with me, just saying it as simply and plainly as I just have. I sort of have chills down the back of my spine. But then it was sort of, late primary school, the, hormones running wild and watching endless numbers of rom-coms with my girlfriends, picturing myself with the cute boy from school and all those sorts of things. Romance really, totally occupied all of my thoughts. And then it was kind of the inescapable reality of, oh my God, I'm gay. But that was such a horrible word. I'd never heard that word used in a positive manner. And there weren't many really good examples of what it meant to be gay, in the late 90s. Like, around that time, Ellen DeGeneres came out as a lesbian and she had the top rating sitcom on American television, and it was cancelled because she came out as gay. It was 1997 when Tasmania became the last state to decriminalise homosexuality. It was still a crime to be gay, as I was becoming aware that I was gay. Ricky Martin was still straight. It was just a very different time. Wow. And so I hated gay, and then a boy on a chat program in the very, very early days of the internet taught me what the word bisexual meant, and it just sounded so much better to only be half of this awful thing. So I sort of came out to my girlfriends as bisexual, and they were like, "Oh, okay." And and then it took me a few more years to, it was America where I saw so many examples of people being gay and being happy and comfortable in their own skin, and that was the start of me kind of, I don't know, hating myself less and learning to love myself.
Yeah, I think that kids go through, especially because especially in the 90s, we're talking about the 90s, there was so little representation, and then the representation that we did get was so lashed with negativity that it forced us to have some sort of internalized homophobia. I remember going through it as well, even in high school, so early 2000s. I remember thinking to myself, oh, the world hates gay people. Oh, well, then I hate gay people because I don't want to be gay because everyone's going to hate me then. And I remember vividly thinking that. And it was like, I still see it to this day sometimes when people make homophobic comments. And I just think, wow, you have a lot of internalized homophobia because you're only making this comment because you don't want anyone else to think that you're gay.
Yeah.
But it's not a negative thing. It's not a negative thing. Embrace the fact that Lauren and I talk about this all the time. 100% believe that we're all fluid because you never know who you're going to meet.
Fluid until proven straight.
Yep.
And I think a lot of it, a lot of homophobia comes from internalist insecurity. I don't think some people are just horrible and are hateful, but I think a lot of people, there's something that sits uncomfortably within themselves. It's not about me. This is all about you. You're treating me this way, and because of something you got to resolve. And yeah, I think you're right.
I think it's also the lack of education surrounding.
But also, have we all worked in customer service at one point? The Karen that comes in and makes your day terrible. You think, gee, what's going on in her life that she had to be a bitch to me?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right?
It's projection.
Absolutely.
All right,
Definitely.
So you are a journalist and you come from a background in writing. When did that start for you? When did you first think, oh, I'm gonna write something down and be a creative?
Very early. I don't know where it comes from. There are no writers in my family. I don't know where the sort of seed of inspiration originated, but I was 5 and my mum bought me a old black and red typewriter from a flea market and brought it home, and I just instantly loved it, and I spent hours on it every day. And then I started a little neighborhood newspaper called the Arthur Street Chronicle.
Oh, that's so cute.
That is really
that I would
cute.
type out on my little typewriter, and then my eldest brother's quite a bit older, and he would print it for me at his work, photocopy it, and then I'd put it in people's letterboxes, and it would just be stories about my cat or the neighbour or whatever.
I love that.
You were spreading the gossip from 5 years old. My God.
Absolutely. Not as sexy as Bridgerton, but similar sort of vibe. And it just, I don't know, people loved it, obviously, because it was such a bizarre little novelty. This, kid that had only just learnt to writing these. I mean, it was terrible, I'm sure, but it just, I don't know. And then that was it. I knew that I wanted to be a journalist, that I wanted to tell stories. It's so funny because growing up, adults would observe me at my typewriter or doing my newspaper or whatever and say, oh, wow, you're going to be an author one day, you're going to write a book. And I'd say, no, I don't really want to write a book. I just want to write newspaper stories. And now I've written 2 books. So, yeah. And then I just kept going with that. I started, the internet kind of, took off, and I started writing for American publications when I was 14 while I was still in Yeppoon. And then I went to the US and I started writing for some decent-ish magazines over there. Wrote a piece about what it was like to grow up in the country in Australia for The Advocate magazine, which is like the original OG gay press.
Yeah.
And then I worked at my local newspaper in the final year of high school, and then moved to Brisbane, finally escaped Central Queensland, moved to Brizzy to study university.
That's amazing.
And then you've
studied
written
journalism
14.
at university. Yeah, so 14, I was working as a journalist for a major national news organisation, and it was during the time of the Safe Schools debate, which was just horrendous. I think it was a real foundation for homophobes and conservatives to kind of come up with a game plan for marriage equality, because it was just this anti-bullying program designed to make kids feel included and safe and secure, and to demystify whatever they are for their peers, became weaponized and really political, and all sorts of ugly stuff was being said. And I was on my way home from work one day, and a member of parliament from my neck of the woods in central Queensland stood in Parliament and described safe schools as nothing more than a way for gay men to groom boys.
Oh, I
And I
hate
just,
that.
it's such a tired old trope, and yet we're seeing it again now with trans people and drag queens. I mean, like homophobes, like really arch extreme homophobes, they're not creative. They just borrow the same shit from decades past.
Yeah.
And here it was again. And I was, 30 or so, I can't remember, and living in a suburb that I chose to live in, great friends, really full life, amazing partner, incredible job. And instantly I just felt crushed, like I had when I was a teenager living in sort of daily hell in a small town where everyone hated me and being gay was the worst thing you could be. And I thought, like, oh my God, if this is how I feel as all of those things I've just listed, this amazing life, if it affects me this much, imagine how 14-year-old Shannon would have felt, already terrified of the world, to see, a politician stand in this hallowed place and compare people like me to pedophiles. What are the worst things that you could ever be? And so I wrote an opinion piece, mostly just to get it out of my head. When I'm angry or scared or whatever, I write and just get it out of my head. And most of it never sees the light of day, thankfully, because it's mostly garbage. But this I wrote down. And then the ego inside of me, I was like, oh, I think this might be quite good, actually. so I sent it to the opinion editor at work, and she was like, oh, my God, are you sure you want to share this? Like, it's great, and I'll happily run it, but are you sure you want to share this? And then I paused and thought, oh, yeah, this whole opinion piece is saying safe schools would have been great for me because here's what happened to me at 14, and here's the day that I almost killed myself because of it. And I realized that I hadn't told many people in my life those stories. My mum knew I was having a tough time. My siblings knew. I told my husband bits and pieces, but no one knew the full, raw, unvarnished history of me at 14 at this, all boys rugby league Catholic school. And so I had a few very quick conversations to say, hey, Mum, this thing's coming out tomorrow and it's a bit heavy, but just FYI. But put it out, and it went off. It went viral online. It was republished the day after that in most of our newspapers. And full disclosure, I work for News Corporation, which doesn't always have those types of pieces in the opinion pages.
Yeah.
Tend to skip the opinion pages myself. And it was phenomenal, this really human insight into a debate that everybody had discarded the human element from. It was no longer about school kids. It was about, corruption and ideological motives and whatever. And I mean, obviously it didn't change the outcome. Safe Schools was killed off. But what it did was, I got literally thousands of messages, and I made a point of reading them all and responding to them all. And none of them were negative. And that's the first time I've ever experienced that.
Yeah,
but
that's amazing.
Huge, particularly writing for News Corp.
Yeah. I've met people at News Corp, I get it.
Yes, yes. People are very vocal, but what struck me was that there were messages from gay men of my age, which was to be expected. There were messages from, little gay boys now who saw parts of themselves in that story. There were messages from, the fag hags and the loving mums of gay boys, and then from all people who had no connection to the queer community. And then there were about half a dozen messages from mums of boys just like me who hadn't survived that time of their life. They had lost their lives to suicide. And they said, you need to keep talking because what you've done in that 800-word piece is so that it always gets better, that, you endured all this hell and here you are, you hung on. And you just had to, somehow you found the strength to hold on and found your way of getting through, and wasn't it worth it? And so, I kind of thought, there's something here, I think, and that's how 14 was born. It's, you know, that story that I wrote is it's smack bang in the middle of the book, and there are many other kind of equally harrowing ones like it, but also what it tells is the story of how I got through what was an unrelenting hell. You know, and all it took was two girlfriends watching Rage and video hits with me and coming up with awful dances to 90s pop songs. And it took a couple of small acts of kindness, and then it took little elements of hope that made me feel like my life wasn't going to always be like this.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful and such powerful stuff. I know that Jess and I speak all the time and say that we do what we do. We try and open up the conversation, and that's essentially what you did with 14.
Yeah.
Kept the conversation going, and that's what those parents of those kids are saying.
Yeah.
I think what's really shit is that you as a person listening to that politician, you know, we have these influential people that have a soapbox that can say whatever they want. And we rely on those people to look after the smaller communities or the marginalized communities. And when they are against you, and this whole thing about LGBT umbrella, including pedophilia and hiding pedophiles, is such a load of bullshit that it comes down to, you know, every time Lauren and I say love is love, we have to say between two consenting adults so that somebody doesn't come back and say, oh, you're promoting pedophilia. It's, as you said, the age-old bullshit.
Yeah. It's repetitive.
And it's madness. My second book was on child sexual abuse. So I've read pretty much every piece of research you can read. And, you know, unfortunately for these nutters that are pushing that agenda, they fit the archetype of pedophile more than queer people
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
They
Absolutely.
are overwhelmingly heterosexual men in their 40s and 50s with wealth and means who use things like church and religious organisations and community organisations to mask their offending. So I wouldn't be picketing outside of drag story time at a library. If I was really concerned about child welfare, I'd probably picket outside a church.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
But they won't, because they don't actually care.
No, that's it. They're not actually advocating for kids.
No.
The biggest thing as well, so, you know, these people have a soapbox. They have a voice. We rely on them. We can't rely on them. And you took that terrible thing that was said and your own experience, and you turned it into something awesome. You turned it into something, art, and something that spoke to clearly so many people.
Thank you. And it's, you know, it was all a happy accident. You know, I don't want to give you the false impression that I'm some genius who had this grand plan. It was all just, I was pissed off, and I wanted to express my anger. But I guess, you know, some good things are born out of anger and passion.
That's true.
Yeah, but it's, I have such mixed feelings about the book and now about the play. And what I mean by that is that it's incredible that so many people like the book and like the play, and they see things in it that speaks to them. But the flip side of that is that people see too much of themselves in it. Like, I'm not young. What happened to me, you know, technically the play is classed as a period piece because it's so old. Like the late 90s was 1,000 years ago, basically, in a cultural sense. Yeah. Why is this still happening? Why are we still having the same conversations? Why do I go to shows and hear from kids afterwards that, you know, they see themselves in this book or in this play? And, you know, it's just, and we're talking about safe schools, and you know, several weeks ago was a council in Sydney, you know, queer-friendly capital of the world, banning a book about a little boy with two dads, and then like everyone admitted that they haven't even read it. Like, it's just like, my God, you know, two steps forward, one step back with this fight, it seems. And so I really, you know, I love that people get something from it, and then also I sort of feel frustrated that there's still so much work to do.
Yeah, that's how Lauren and I feel about the fact we have this podcast. It's a great thing, and we're very happy that we get to do it, and we get to speak to some amazing people like yourself. However, if the world was such a good place, we wouldn't need it. And so
need our podcast.
That's the same feeling. So we talk about leaving marks on the world, and we can do our best for the time that we're here, and hopefully we leave our mark when we move on. I hope that even in 5 years, we don't need this podcast, or we don't need to, these things will be, oh, look what we had to go through just to get to where we are now, instead of, as you say, look what we had to go through, look what's still happening.
Yeah.
And things, things that have changed, and they continue to change, which is great. But yeah, I worry sometimes that the broader community, and some even in our community, to be honest, look at, like marriage equality and think, oh, well, job done,
Yeah.
No,
really.
not really.
No, the fight's still going.
Yeah, exactly. So, and also, if you are complacent about something, the people that don't want you to have it can sneak back in and take it away. So I think it's always really important to keep talking about where we've come from, but also not to think that the journey is done.
Yeah. And so how much of your real life was put into 14?
The whole lot.
The whole lot of it.
Wow. It was raw.
Yeah. It was. And in fact, if anything, we sort of took stuff out. I put everything down. Even in my day job as a journalist, I just throw everything at the wall and then see what the lawyers will let me get away with. And it was basically
great way to do it.
It's a great way to do it, and they can be real killjoys sometimes. But I mean, it's all true. It's just sometimes it's too true. But with the book, I did just that, and then went through the process with my editor and my publisher of, looking at things that might be problematic. And the last thing you want is to give an asshole a really strong case of defamation and they win, even though it's true, and then they get a ton of money. So if we pared back a few things that related to characters in the book, to people in the book that were still alive, that had committed essentially a crime, but haven't been tried and convicted of it. So you can't, you have to be quite careful. And then other little things like changing names of anyone who comes across poorly, physical descriptions of anyone who I go into great detail about, the love interest in the book in particular. But that's about it. Everything else was in there, and it was warts and all. Wow. Even the stuff about me that, like, when I was an asshole, I didn't even, again, I'm not a genius. I didn't even think about putting in my flaws as being a way of balancing my character. I was just being really honest. And then a lot of the feedback was about how refreshing it was to see that I hadn't just kind of whitewashed my own experience and made myself the total perfect hero.
Yeah.
Like there's a very camp kid that I went to school with, and because of my own internalized homophobia, I hated him because if he was next to me, then the attention was amplified, and so he was trying to befriend me, which I could almost cry just talking about it. I was so mean to him, and but so yeah, I even put that in, even though I still feel sick thinking about some of the things that I said to him and the way I treated him when he was just trying to be really nice to me. And anyway.
In high school and in school in general, it's a very, very hard time for everyone to go through, and we're all going through self-discovery, no matter what that looks like for you. I can totally relate. I went through high school thinking bully or be bullied, because you have to seem strong so that nobody picks on you. So then you end up picking on other people.
It's that sink or swim mentality, I think.
Yeah.
And I have so many regrets about that. The one thing, if anyone asks me, what would you go back to high school and change? I'd say nothing except for how I treated some people. Because, as you say, I 100% felt, what's the word? I felt kind of intimidated by people who weren't afraid to be themselves. And I think that was just the fact that I was afraid to be myself, you know, and you never wanted to be the odd one out or the different one that everyone's looking at or everyone's picking on themselves. So you had to come across as this strong person, and really we're all kids, we're all innocent. No one's that strong. We're all just trying to get through each day with the stress and anxiety of school itself.
Which is an
totally.
Yeah,
the jungle. Just trying to survive.
absolutely. And we have no tools except for what our parents have given us, which everyone comes from a different background. Some of us have really good support systems and some of us don't. And I think it's important for the next generation, even now, to go in knowing that we don't all have the same
network.
Support network.
Yes.
And so we need to be able to provide that for people instead of take it further away, which, wow, it's just makes me upset too, a little bit, I think.
Yeah. And it's exactly what you just said about being intimidated. Like the guy that I'm thinking of, I used to, and I still do, like feel this envy about how he just didn't give a shit what anyone thought of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like me, he had never declared that he was gay. But people would say it to him, he'd be like, well, whatever. And, and we used it in the play. Someone would call him a homo and he'd be like hetero. And the boys just wouldn't even know what it meant. They'd be like, I'm not a hetero. And so we've used that in the play. He was just he didn't care. And all if he did, he was really good at not showing it. And I really envied that. And I still do. And I've tried to find him, but he's not on the social media platforms. But I hope he's well. And I really do think about him so often.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Have you tried to find him and reach out? But you just answered that.
I have. I mean, I found everyone else. I'm constantly stalking the boys that made my life hell and the teachers who are horrible to me. And I know where almost all of them are.
You just send them a link to the play.
Yeah, like, here's my success, suckers.
Just so you know.
Yeah, that's a funny part of it too. I was just quickly, sorry, I'm rambling now, I know.
No,
I'm
go
just
for
going to say
it.
really quickly. A lot of people ask me about the really bad bullies in the book and, have any of them reached out to apologise? And they haven't, but also, they're probably busy or they don't like books or whatever. But also, I think writing the book and talking about it so much kind of brought an element of forgiveness. I can't forget what happened and what they did, but we were all kids and it's been a long time. And, like I said, I stalk occasionally and I see that they have partners and kids and great jobs and lovely homes and full lives. And I just sort of think, well, it seems like who they are now is a world away from who they were at 14. And, I can't tar them with that brush, at least in my own mind anymore. So that's brought a lot of peace too, which is nice.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think we all need to realise that as we go through life, we do grow and we do change and we do adapt. And there's nothing to say that those people that did make your life hell don't think of you daily as well, the same way that you think of that other boy. The same thing could be happening there, like a chain reaction, and we just don't know about it. So it's good to find peace in that way. And the silver lining of all of that is, had you not gone through those experiences and written that really big opinion piece, you wouldn't have 14.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And it's funny, like, I don't know if I would sort of wish it never happened because it was horrible, but there are things that I drew from it. I'm a fairly resilient person, very stoic in the face of it's been a horrible few weeks at work, but I've managed. I'm really drawn on some old character habits there. I'm super empathetic. I have this firing sense of justice inside of me, and I wouldn't have those characteristics if I hadn't gone through what I went through at 14, and maybe who knows. But I think you're right. I like to try and take something from bad and turn it into good if I can.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to be. Otherwise, you're just stuck in that sad resentment feeling, and that doesn't help you.
Yeah.
So speaking on 14, it's now been adapted for the stage, as we've briefly spoken about. What was that process like?
Oh, insane. Like, my book came out the week after the whole country went into lockdown for the first time at COVID, like early 2020. You couldn't have gatherings, you couldn't move, you had to stay in your house, borders were closed, all that sort of stuff. So I had this 4-week promotional tour ready to go, and that was all cancelled. which makes it really hard to sell a book by an unknown first-time author. So I kind of just assumed that it was all over before it had even began, and that was that. But thankfully, the pandemic was a new thing, and so people were really into getting on Zoom and having a book club on Zoom, and having wines on Zoom, and so I think that's how it found its initial audience, and then it kind of took off from there. But I got a DM on Instagram maybe like 5 months after it came out from a fellow who had heard about the book that way online. And it just so happened that he and his two business partners run a phenomenally successful theatre production company. They loved the book. They saw a lot in it that they thought would be fantastic on the stage in sort of bright Technicolor, and Instagrammed me and said, "Have you sold the stage rights?" And I'm like, I'm still fucking selling books. Like, I didn't even know I could sell the stage rights, but sure. So we started talking, and I immediately felt like they got the idea of the book and the purpose of the book, and then like barely 18 months later, it was on a stage.
Wow.
And it was crazy. Like they were very gracious and very, I guess, sort of sensitive that it was my story, and that unlike some other books that have been adapted, the author's still alive and he's coming to see the show. So they invited me into the room to help develop it, and then into the room to script it and fine-tune that, and then into the room for rehearsals. So I was involved in most of the steps, and it was very collaborative and very gentle, but just so weird, like to suddenly see this thing that's lived in my mind as a memory for more than 2 decades and then has come out of me onto a page, to suddenly be recreated on a stage in front of an incredible set by powerful and brilliant actors. It was just phenomenal, like the coolest experience ever. And just another really cathartic experience as well, because I get to see in one 110-minute sitting that roller coaster of a year, the dark, but also the really light and the happy, and then the hope. And so it's like a beautiful therapy session or something. I loved it.
I was going to say, what such a surreal moment for you.
Yeah.
So surreal. And like to see me, in inverted commas, was this fantastic actor called Connor Leach play me and physically react to things the way I physically reacted to things, and not because he studied me, but because he sort of has tapped into the emotion of it. And I mean, he's a much better dancer than I ever was. There's a lot of choreography in the show, and he's much better at it. We should have given him booze on the wrong foot or something to make it a bit more true to life. But it's incredible. And it was meant to be just this one-off for Brisbane Festival 2 years ago, and then it sold out, and it was the hit of the festival, and now we're touring nationally, which is insane.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And what did you think when they were like, oh, adapt for stage, and it then becomes a musical, and it's got singing and it's got dancing? And where did your mind go when you're like, oh my God, they're going to write songs about these things and make dances to these things?
Well, the songs are all, like all good work, we have stolen them. No, we've licensed them. It cost a bomb. It's sort of like the soundtrack of my early adolescence. So, there's a really heartfelt scene, and it's Roxette. There's a really upbeat scene, and it's Shania Twain. There's a really, there's a really inspiring scene, and it's S Club 7.
I love that.
Yeah. So it's it's just music nostalgia from one of just the most innocent and pure periods of pop music as well, where everything was about being yourself and never giving up. And, just, I love it.
Very
I
fitting.
that's all I listen to to this day. But yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of it that I couldn't see how it would look on a stage, like particularly the really hard scenes. I didn't understand how that would all work. But these guys are, they've won 20 million awards, and they've been doing this for a few decades now, and they tour all over the country multiple times a year. But also they're just really empathetic people. And they've masterfully put it together, and it's harrowing and it's hard. It's all those things, but it's also so beautiful and inspiring, and you kind of leave feeling lighter and maybe a bit more optimistic about the world and the future. So, like, this is by far, this is the greatest thing I've ever done professionally, and on a personal level, aside from getting married and becoming a father, it's also the third best thing I've done personally.
Yeah.
Well, it's like your third baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I guess leaving people feeling lighter is leaving them with that hope, right? Because you did make it out. You made it to the other side of that darkness and, found the light at the end of the tunnel, and you wrote this amazing thing. And a lot of us queer kids are creative to our core because that's how we get all those feelings out. So it's like there is so much hope there to be able to create something beautiful out of darkness. And you're showing people that. Yeah,
and that's the greatest joy, that what I'd hoped and dreamt of is happening, that people go into it, and all types of people. We did a show in Bathurst a few weeks ago, the regular evening show where everyone comes and it's people of all different ages. And then the next day I stayed and we did a matinee for 300 high school kids from Bathurst, which is, it's a town built on motor racing. So it's, I was worried about what
not typically queer.
Not typically, no. But they were incredible, and they stayed for this Q&A afterwards. And this young man got up and he said, I'm not queer, but I just want to say that, like, that, that's really shown me that whatever you're going through, you got to stick it out and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to cry. And then later the teacher said to me, he doesn't normally speak up like that. You must have really struck a chord. And I love that. I love that sometimes the world at the moment, how it is, it feels like there maybe aren't many reasons to be hopeful. But the dawn follows the darkest night always. So, yeah.
I think it's also important to recognise that queer media is so important for queer kids, but we've talked about it's also for people that aren't queer to know how we've had to be resilient. And it's not for us to change who we are, it's for others to change how they see us, how they perceive us, how they treat us.
Just acceptance.
How you can treat those that you might not know are going through certain aspects of their life. And so it's not always queer stories for queer kids, it's queer stories for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think the more we understand each other as people, whoever we are, the less we view the world as being black and white when it's not. It's a million shades of grey. There's context, there's history. And if we don't get that about each other, of course, we're going to make assumptions and exclude people because we think we know this and that about them. So I absolutely agree. 14 was also the screen rights were sold for 14, and it was developed and scripted. And it was so disheartening to be in rooms with small screen companies. I don't want to name any of them. I'll tell you off the air. And to have them say, like, literally, oh, no, we've got our gay thing this year. And it's like, oh, my God. Okay.
You're like, no, there's never enough gay. Excuse me.
Yes, absolutely, for one. But also, two, like, it's a human story, Like, it's just madness that's still how some people will feel. But, like I look at a show like Heartbreak High on Netflix and I watch it and, like, I cried, but not because of the content, or not just because of the content, but because I think this would never have it didn't exist when I was a kid, but no one would have written it. No one would have funded it. No one would have starred in it. No one would dare play a gay character. And now this is not just a massive hit, but it's speaking to kids, all types of kids, neurodivergent, single-parent households, diverse ethnic backgrounds. What a wonderful world to live in.
Yeah. For so long, I feel like the world has been shown a singular way for multiple things, for families, for success, what success looks like, all these different things that we feel get us to a place of happiness, and we've only been shown one way for so long. And I feel like this is the beginning of seeing that, well, you can achieve so much in your life various ways. There's not one single way to do something. It's like families come in all shapes and sizes, and they always have. But we've always had that man and a wife and 2.5 kids and a dog. And that's what everyone sees as a goal. It's like, no, the goal is happiness. Whatever that looks like for you is the goal.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's where all these different stories and storytelling in general can change perception and really, even, as we said, even for people that aren't in the queer space, for them to realize that, oh, you know, I don't even need a partner to be happy. Like, I can be 100% independent and still have success, because I know that's a big thing for a lot of people as well, is forming all these romantic relationships, and that's an end goal. But there's so much more to life that we don't get shown. And I think that's where storytelling can change the narrative and change hearts and minds for a better world to live in.
Yeah. And to show people that you can do whatever you want. You know, my philosophy is, if you're not hurting anyone, if you're not hurting yourself, go for gold, whatever makes you happy.
Yeah. Well, we've spoken a lot about coming out and your award-winning memoir, but tell our listeners, what's next for you?
Oh, God. I'm tired. We're going
Fair.
Is it good tired, though? Is it good tired?
It is a good tired. I mean, I work in creative pursuits. I should never complain about being busy. I'm aware that it may go away one day. So the play's touring. I'm back and forward with that. I'm in my day job as well. Quietly on the side. It's quiet because I've signed non-disclosures, but I've started ghostwriting books for other people. So
excellent.
I'm on my second ghostwriting project at the moment, which is really exciting, and then workshopping with my agent book 3 for myself. So
nice.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
And then hopefully a holiday somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere you got to fit that in.
Away.
Somewhere nice. Somewhere not cold, because it's bloody freezing at the moment.
Yeah. It is freezing.
Absolutely.
And we're only just entering winter, global warming and all that jazz. Fuck.
And we can't talk. We're in Brisbane and it's cold for us.
Yeah, far
Yes.
So before we let you go, what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who is struggling with coming out that you kind of wish you had, I guess?
Yeah, what do you wish someone told you, maybe? Some advice.
So a few things. I'll try and be eloquent.
You don't have to
You don't have to be. We're real and raw here.
So a few things. One, that you don't have to rush. You can do anything at your own pace. Don't feel like there's a right time or a wrong time to come out. It's what feels right for you. The other thing is that, if the people you're surrounded by aren't your people, you will find your people. There's a whole big world out there. You can go and do anything and be anything, and you'll find your tribe. And that's when life truly begins. And then finally, there are so many times that feel so shit that you can't see beyond it. It just feels like things are never going to be good again. This is the way life is always going to be. And that is never true. It is never, ever true. It always gets better, and you've got to hang in there, lean on people, do something that makes you smile, even if just for a minute, but don't give up. It always, always gets better.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true.
That's so beautiful.
And by having these creative things like 14 that you can watch and feel seen for a moment, I hope that helps any of our listeners that are struggling get through. That's why we do what we do. That's why we create what we create. Yeah, we don't want anyone to feel isolated or alone. We want you to get to the other side of that darkness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, for all of our amazing listeners,
Shannon's production of 14 is currently touring.
It starts in Brisbane today, everybody. That's why we're doing this wonderful interview with Shannon today. So today, the 12th of June through to the 6th of July here in Brisbane. if you're anywhere else in Australia or anywhere else in the world, keep up to date with where 14 is going to be.
We'll be sure to include the tour in our show notes.
Yes, we'll put everything in the show notes. So make sure you follow Shannon and his journey and everything that he is creating.
And we are hoping to be there.
Yeah, we are going to go get tickets.
Please come along.
We
would
will.
love to. We
absolutely will. Wow, what an awesome chat. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us here on Just Gay Stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
It's so lovely. Thank you for having me, and thanks for doing what you do as well. It's so important, and you're smashing it as well.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Well, we'll keep up to date and we'll put everything in the show notes for everybody, and hopefully you'll get all of those shows sold out here in Brizzy.
And
That would be
hopefully
great.
We'll see you there.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see
See
you
you
there.
All right.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Bye. Get to 14. Make sure you buy them tickets.
Ooh, fancy.
I was trying to do something a little bit different.
She's doing a musical number for musical.
14.
14.
Yeah.
That was such an incredible interview.
I think we say this every time we do an interview.
We do, because they are. We're so humbled by the guests that we have on.
Everyone, go and follow Shannon. And if you haven't followed us, you got to follow us too.
Yes.
That's part of the T's
Part
and
of the
C's.
deal.
Part of the T's and C's. No one tells you, but we're telling you. Well,
I don't know what else to say, but remember to
stay gay, motherfuckers.
I'm talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about just gay stuff.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Just Gay Stuff. Make sure to follow us at Just Gay Stuff Podcast on all your socials and write to us with your stories at justgaystuffpodcast@gmail.com.